Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Digital Techniques, episode number 4. I am the webcomic.alliance.com resident crazy chick, Dawn Griffin of zfcomics.com, and I am here to show you today the inside info on how I work on Zorfbert and Fred as of this current moment. I have a Wacom-enabled tablet PC, and I draw directly on the screen. I even sketch it out, as you can see right here. I've already started sketching this next comic that I'm working on, and I'm going to show you how I sketch and ink right here live on Digital Techniques. And first off, I'll show you over here on the layers palette. I have my sketch layer, I have a line layer, I have a color layer, layer for balloons or bubbles, text. So everything's broken into layers, so that when I'm done with the sketch layer, I can just turn it off, as you see. And I even have a backgrounds layer if I want to plop in some commonly used line art, such as grass or the carpeting or something like that just falls in the background. So that's basically how I break down my comic here. Next, I want to show you my brushes. I have saved an entire palette of brushes, so if I ever need to access them, I can go to Open Brush Library, and I have comic brushes right here. So if you gather a bunch that you like and use over and over, be sure to save it. You just go right here, Save Brush Library. And these are the ones I commonly use. This one I called Small. I'll open and show it to you. Very slight angle on it, only a 1 point diameter, and variation is 1 point as well. They're all set to pressure. This is key if you have a Wacom tablet or a tablet PC, to make sure this is set to pressure. It might be set to fixed by default, but you want to make sure these are all set to pressure, and that way when you use your stylus, you'll notice when you press harder you get a thicker line, and when you press less you'll get a thinner line. And this, the first brush that I had opened here that I called Small, this one's the one I use for penciling. There is no variation to it, so it's just a very thin line, and I can go through and roughly sketch out my characters. I'm a very rough sketcher, as you can see. Very simple. When I go in and ink, I definitely add some more detail and take it slower. This one here I called Regular. This is what I use for inking for the most part. It's 4 point diameter and 4 point variation, which means it can go from 1 to 4 points of thickness depending on the pressure with the stylus. And I did put more of an angle. You can always adjust this to see which feels right to you as you're drawing on the screen or on your Wacom tablet. And I have a couple more brushes I'll get into later. They're for coloring, and that'll be a separate episode, so stay tuned for that. But now I'm going to go on to my sketch layer here, and I'm going to start sketching away this last panel, and I will speed it up for you, and you can listen to some tunes while I draw. See you again in a little bit.
Most of all,
Okay, folks, welcome back. I finished sketching this last panel here, as you can see, and hopefully through the fast forwarded effects you could make out my process a little bit. One of the big benefits of working digitally is if you realize you've drawn the panel a little too small or too big, or you need to remove something, it's as easy as selecting a section of it and moving just that section. You can size down if you need to. Let it render there. Alright. You can size it down if you needed more panel space. You can size it back up. You can move characters around on the page and be able to quickly and easily edit your picture to fit and compose the panel nicely. So it's something to consider if you're considering switching over to digital. Now I am preparing to ink, so I will lock my sketch layer down here and unlock my line layer. My line layer also includes the panels, which I usually lay out first to begin with. So I'll start off with a template that has 4 even-sized panels, and then I'll move them according to how much dialogue I'll need, or how I'm going to paste the story for that comic. So as you can see, there's a long panel here and a couple short panels, because this panel here will be filled with dialogue, and these other shorter panels only have a couple little small balloons. Alright, I'm going to ink this last panel since you sat here and watched me sketch it out. I tend to zoom in as much as I can on the panel. I'm actually going to even make this bigger down here. And you might see that I really will zoom in to some areas to get the line to go the way I want to. Another benefit is being able to blow something up really big, so you don't have to hunch over a drawing table and work on a very small little area that you're trying to perfect. You can just use the magnifying glass and zoom in, and I definitely miss that when I'm drawing in real life, as they say. Alright, I'm going to select my inking brush and make sure I have my black selected that I'd like to use. And I'm going to ink this last panel first, which is a rarity for me. I usually go first to last, but alright, cue the music and I'll see you when I'm done.
Well, just because she feeds me well and she made me talk dirty in a pink hotel, it doesn't mean she's got eyes for me. She might just want my bones, you see. And hey, flyhead, don't you get me? She's the second best killer that I ever have seen. It don't come much more sick than you. I could go on and you want me to. It's just so wrong, so very nice. And I told you once and you killed me twice. Saw you one time on the back of the club, chewing on glass and a ticket stub. Said I heard you kid the boy till he bled. And you stood and said, oh my God, till she said,
Alright folks, welcome back again. And I just finished inking this panel. I'm going to turn off the sketch layer so you can see how it'll look once it's finished. And in the next episode I'll show you how I add color into this, or gray tones, whatever you prefer. But this is the basic rundown of using calligraphy brushes in Illustrator and how to make the most out of Wacom technology. And just run through with the brushes for you again. Um, as you saw with me inking, if I apply a little bit of pressure, I'll get a very thin line. If I apply more pressure, I get a thicker line. This all depends on the size of brush you have. This was the biggest brush I use, typically for coloring or laying in big blocks of blacks. This is my inking pen, so you'll see this is a little bit of pressure, and this is more pressure. So you see the difference between the two. This is probably 1 point, and this is closer to 4. As you saw on the brush, 4-point diameter, 4-point variation. And that is what you end up getting. If you go into paintbrush tool preferences, you also can adjust a little bit more to the brush. Typically, how it snaps to the curve that you are drawing. If you take the fidelity up, you'll see that it actually follows a very loose curve, and you don't have as much control this way. If you have it low, like I usually use 0.5 here pixels, that gives me the most amount of control, so that little tiny marks, hatch marks, will come through, as you can see there. Now if I change this, I try to, you can see how it smooths them out. Doesn't have as much style to that. And watch how it smooths out that curve there. And as you can see, it really changes the shape of how you draw. So you'll have to decide what fidelity is best for you. Smoothness kind of works into the same idea. If I take up smoothness, look how much that brings it out there. You can see the difference. And if you bring this all the way back down, you can see however I draw, when the fidelity and the smoothness is low, whatever I draw is basically exactly how it looks, and I prefer more control. But if you prefer a very slick and clean look to your line, you might want to play with the fidelity just a bit. And one last tip before you go. If you have a tablet PC, you might be able to adjust buttons on your stylus pen, or maybe there's a button that you can assign a command to on your tablet laptop itself. And I had two options, and as you can see here, the button on the stylus is actually assigned to be a right click, as if you had a mouse. So what this is great for, especially in Illustrators, when I right click, the first thing at the top is the last thing to undo. So it's a very good trick. So if I drew something and I didn't like it, undo. And without your keyboard available, because most tablet PCs cover up the keyboard when they are put in tablet mode, you lose all your key commands. So that gets tricky. And there is a button on my, not that you can see it, but there's a button on my tablet that I have assigned to be clear. So everything, if I wanted to clear that, I press the button. that I have assigned, and it will clear it for me, as you can see. Alright folks, there's the sketch again so you can see. And that concludes number 4, inking and sketching in Illustrator using Wacom tablet or tablet PC. Tune in for the next one and we'll tackle coloring.